Welcome everybody to another panel discussion by these absolutely incredible, amazing, influential parenting experts who all took part of my Becoming a Peaceful Parent Summit. So I am calling these panel discussions, We Are Rising, Parenting in a Time of Crisis, because it is several weeks into this crisis and we are still in it. So today we are going to have a discussion around that and how do we cope with continued stress and anxiety. I'm hearing a lot of parents are having a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety. Kids are getting antsier. There's a lot of sleep disturbances and increase in anxiety and depression and things like that. So we really are here to support you. The way this is going to work is I'm going to do an introduction of all the panelists. I will have some topics prepared for everybody to discuss. So I have my imaginary ball that I'm going to be throwing it to all the panelists and they get to start the discussion and then everybody else can chime in. And I will make sure that we will have time for some Q&A at the end. So the chat is there for you guys to interact with each other. I would love to kind of see where is everybody from. And one question I want to put out there, what is your number one problem right now? So I'm licensed clinical social worker. By the way, if you don't know me, I'm Paula Kettelak, licensed clinical social worker, work with kids and families. And I've been hosting these panel discussions as well as the Becoming a Peaceful Parent Summit. And I'm on a mission to support parents the best that I can. So write on the chat so I can provide you some support around whatever is your biggest problem and that we can provide you support around that. Also where you are from. So before I introduce the panelists, I kind of always want to share a little bit about, you know, some mindset strategies and stuff around this crisis that we are experiencing. So what I was thinking about today is I'm a truth seeker. So I believe that there are truths and meanings in life. So today I was just reflecting on how do we penetrate through the pain and the suffering and the anxiety that this global pandemic is causing and find some underlying meaning and purpose in all that. Being a trauma therapist, that is also my mission, is to really find what I call the gifts of trauma. So I've been on a mission to really work with people and, you know, brainstorming around, you know, what is the meaning and purpose and the gift that is coming out of this really, really tragic situation. The other point I want to make is that, you know, this has been going on for a long time. The other point is like, yeah, how do we come to an acceptance about everything that is going on? Because we know that whatever we resist persists. And that is so true with children. If we keep fighting the kids, if we keep, you know, trying to be controlling and not accepting where they are, these behaviors will persist. So I want to kind of begin with those thoughts. Hi, Anne from Chicago. There's Jody near Indianapolis. Welcome, welcome, welcome. People are still jumping in. So enough about me. And here's a few words about my lovely panelists. So when I say your name, maybe you can kind of wave your hand so people know who you are. I will start with Debbie Reber. There she is. She is a parenting activist and she is also New York Times best-selling author. She has a book out there, Differently Wired, and it's all about kids with neurodifferences and how parents can empower them and empower themselves as well to help these very unique, absolutely brilliant kids to move through this world, feeling empowered versus feeling shamed. She is also the founder of Tilt Parenting. It's a great resource for parents. There's lots of information even about COVID, resource page for COVID there that I really love. She also has a podcast out there. Anything that I forgot, Debbie? Anything else you want to say about yourself?
We're just an awesome community of awesome parents of awesome kids.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Love it. Love it. Welcome, welcome. Okay,
Thank you.
great. Next we have Sarah Rosensweet. Hi, Sarah. There she is. Sarah is a peaceful parent coach. So she is trained by Dr. Laura Markham through AHA Parenting, and she's all about creating these amazing, incredible relationships with children, and that really the way we influence children has to do with the relationship and the connection we have with them. So she's all about that. She's an amazing parent coach. She's got wealth of information on her website. And yeah, definitely check it out. Anything else you want to add, Sarah?
I have 3 teenagers.
3 teenagers, exactly. Yeah, so you know what it's all
That
about.
to me is the biggest, that's my biggest claim to fame right now.
Yes, exactly. 3 teenagers. Great. And welcome everybody jumping in. Tracy. So write in the chat, what is your biggest problem right now? So we can attempt to solve it for you today. Then we have Julie Burton. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
There she is.
Hi.
And she was also in my summit, and Julie is an author. She's a blogger. She's all about empowering moms and helping mom writers and entrepreneurs to get started. You started the Modern Well co-working space, which sounds really like an incredible community. And Julie has a book out there. It's called The Self-Care Solution, a modern mother's must-have guide to health and well-being. So Julie's going to be talking to us about some self-care and how parents can do that right now. Anything you want to add to that, Julie?
I am with you, Sarah. I have two teenagers, actually a senior in high school and a freshman in high school, and then I have 2 adult children who are now home. So very, very different situation right now that we're in, but interesting times.
Interesting times for sure. Yes, unprecedented. Nothing like this have ever happened, and I'm hoping we are coming out of this as transformed to be a better people, better parents in some ways, better world. So that's what it's all about. That's one of the maybe meanings of this whole situation. And then we have Kelli Belt. Hi, Kelli.
Hello.
And she was also in my summit, and Kelli is an adoptive mom, and she went through some incredibly long, arduous journey to get her daughter adopted. And Kelli, I would like to hear from Kelli, because you've gone through this period of time where you needed a lot of patience and you were in limbo for a long time, just like we are in limbo right now. So I'd like to, and you collected some wisdom and nuggets through your journey, that you are now really an empowerment coach for adoptive moms.
Yes.
Right. And she has a podcast, membership community, and things like that as well. Anything you want to add to that, Kelli?
I am also the mom of teenagers. Two teenage boys, a senior and a sophomore, and then a 5-year-old daughter. So anyone who is parenting 2 totally different stages through this, whew, yeah.
Yeah, so okay, we'll definitely be talking about teenagers. Write in the chat if you have teenagers and what your trouble is with the teenagers right now. Great. Okay, well, let's get started. So my first question is, let's start with Debbie, actually, with this. You know, I was just wondering, and I'm hearing this a lot of people in my community have kids with autism, ADHD, things like that, kids with neurodifferences. Like, what is the impact that you are seeing right now that families, kids, and parents are struggling right now with kids who are having neurodifferences, and they don't have the usual structure and routine and things like that in place that I know that can be incredibly helpful for them. So maybe you can share a little bit what you are seeing and what are some things and tools and insights that parents can do to kind of support their kids.
Yeah, it's really interesting right now. There is a small subset of parents that I'm hearing from whose differently wired kids are actually really thriving right now because they may have been in school environments where they were more in perpetual fight or flight mode and were really struggling, and with all the unpredictability, or maybe they're more homebodies, and so they're really kind of like, this is awesome, like I can just hang out in my room and do my thing, don't have to leave the house. So that is, which is just interesting. So I'm hearing from parents in that situation, but what I'm mostly hearing is just the challenges, especially for kids who
Debbie, we are losing you here. Is anybody else hearing her, or no? We are not. Okay.
To really struggle with attending to a lot of parents. I see that can you hear me
Debbie,
now?
we lost you there.
Frozen.
Yeah, we lost you there for a bit, but we have your audio right now. So even if your picture is frozen, that's okay. But yeah, maybe you can backtrack a little bit and backtrack just a little bit and share what you were sharing about the parents who were struggling. You're back online now.
Sure. Okay. Sorry about that. My son is doing a class, right? My teenage son is doing a class right now. He may be taking some of my bandwidth. So the thing I'm hearing the most from parents are parents who are really struggling with that balance of how much do I hover or monitor or, kind of micromanage my child's online learning for kids who really struggle with paying attention, with distraction, and with just attending to what's happening in their online courses. And so I'm hearing from a lot of parents who are really going to a place of fear and, spiraling about what does this mean for my child's future? If this is happening now, I'm going to fail them, and what's going to happen with school? And so they're getting kind of caught up in this fear cycle right now because of their child's struggles to do something, which is just, what child isn't struggling, right, with this current classroom environment? And so that's a lot of the conversations that I'm having with parents is, thinking about where are there opportunities to push back. Some schools are really open to this. I've heard that many schools are open to this conversation of like, listen, my child will not be doing X, Y, and Z. This is creating too much anxiety in my house, and this is what we'll be doing instead. And so I'm trying to encourage parents and help them think about how to have those conversations, how to frame it with the school, and also just kind of returning to baseline. These kids are more sensitive, often heightened anxiety response, and maybe experiencing this so much more deeply than a neurotypical child might. And we know that neurotypical children are struggling greatly right now. And so I'm really trying to help parents get their kids back to baseline, focusing on their mental and emotional well-being, and being okay with that looking really messy right now. And that might mean that a lot of schoolwork isn't going to happen, and being okay with that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I love that, because I've also noticed how parents, they feel a lot of pressure, because right now, like, oh my gosh, like I'm suddenly like having to be this educator, and then the school is just like giving worksheet after worksheet and this and stuff. But so I love your message that, it's actually okay to go to the teacher and say, like, things are not working out in our home, and this is what's working, and this is what we're going to do, and then asking for other kind of support. But I think for parents, sometimes it's that little child in them that might have like some anxiety around authority, that it has even hard time going against what the teacher is saying. So be courageous, advocate for your kids, for your family, and what works. How about those fears? Like you mentioned, there's a lot of fears about the future, like, oh my gosh, like my kid is not gonna learn and they're gonna be so behind. How can parents manage that, those fears and worries?
Well, and a lot of the fears too are about social isolation. And, you know, a lot of the parents in my community, their kids already had tenuous relationships at best. And so what does this mean for their social emotional development? I'm a big fan of getting clear on what those fears are and confronting them, like kind of noticing them, acknowledging them. And that might be writing down, like, what's the worst case scenario? What are my greatest fears around this? My child, you know, is going to flunk out of school. My child will never have a friend. My child will never, you know, kind of go there. Let yourself go to the worst case scenarios of what this could mean, because you need those fears are in us. So not dealing with them or acknowledging them could make them, I think you said in the beginning, what we resist persists. So we should get really clear on what those things are, and then we can design like an uneasy alliance with those stories and recognize, okay, that's a story I have. It's not necessarily true. In fact, I can probably find lots of evidence of how this might not be true. And so how can I kind of ease some of the pain that surrounds that story by creating the possibility that maybe that story isn't quite true. So it's like a dance that we have to do with our fears. So we need to, they're part of us. That voice is, so we want to design an alliance with it.
Absolutely. I love that. And even beginning with that inquiry of like, okay, maybe, even if it's just maybe, the fears feel so true and it feels like, yes, this is what's going to happen. But that inquiry in and of itself can already start like lessening those fears. And I really love this technique of like going through the worst case scenario, like go to it and then ask yourself like, then what? So then what can you do? Even if the worst case scenario happens, what people realize, like, you know what, there's still a solution to that too. So it doesn't end up being this huge, big monster that we can actually manage that. So befriending the fears, confronting them, and not resisting. How about anybody else? Does anybody else have any other ideas or feedback, suggestions to this conversation?
I love what Deborah was saying, and just to remember, and then what you added on after the worst case scenario, there's always a solution. So I always talk to parents about this idea that no matter what happens, we can handle it, right? So I think that's like the antidote to this anxiety that we're all experiencing right now, is that it's not easy, or it might not be easy, or it might not be what we want, but we can handle it. It's that, you know, having a resilient attitude.
Absolutely, yeah. And that parents and we can build that resiliency ourselves, even through that positive self-talk versus that critical, you know, bossy side that we sometimes, and we can fire that one and have this resilient inner coach just on your side and building this resilience. I can handle this. Wonderful. How about anybody else?
I think what I see coming up a lot is just that, along the same lines, that lack mentality, and you know, like really kind of not seeing options. It shuts us down. It shuts down options, choices, and our kids pick up on that. Especially like from my situation, with adopted kids from trauma backgrounds, hard places, they're so stress sensitive to whatever's going on with the parent that man, they pick up on that and they don't feel safe.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So maybe even like shifting the focus on that lack mentality of the scarcity of like, what do we have now? We have more time together to spend as a parent. So kind of like shifting the focus on something positive. And that really, like that, we know that the brain is plastic, there's neuroplasticity, and those are all, you know, ways of building resiliency and sense of well-being just by these concrete ways of shifting our thoughts. Great, thank you for that, Kelli. And so everybody who have jumped in, we have questions going on in in the chat. What is your biggest problem? Also, I saw somebody raise their hands. We will get to all the raised hands as well as questions that you can put in the Q&A at the end after we are done with this discussion topic. So, okay, let me go to Sarah next. And I wanted to ask you, like, what are some typical signs of stress in children that we can expect right now, so that parents can kind of understand, like, oh, okay, this is normal under the circumstances. So maybe we could talk to us a little bit about that. And then what can parents do to help those kids who are really stressed out?
Okay. So what I'm seeing a ton of in the parents that I work with, and also in the in my Facebook groups, is a ton of regression and whining. Lots of whining. A lot of the people I work with have kids who are, you know, sort of 10 and under, and I'm seeing that parents are, you know, they're stressed because they're trying to work from home and pandemic schooling and all that stuff, and then the kids are like, I don't want that, I want, you know, and I think that we need to remember that regression at times of stress is completely normal, and almost to expect that kids are going to regress when things are difficult. I mean, we're regressing, right? like
Yeah.
We're whining.
Yeah.
So really to normalize that regression, remember that whining is a sign that the child doesn't have the resources for whatever you're asking of them. It's not that they're trying to be difficult. They're having a hard time, not giving you a hard time. I personally don't recommend that parents say, you know, ask me again in a nice way, or where's your strong voice, when it's whining because of regression, because it's really that sort of ignoring the emotion behind the whining is, well, it's ignoring the reason for the behavior, right? So I really want to hear parents say things like, wow, you seem to be having such a hard time right now. Come on, let's have a hug, let's have a snuggle. You can tell me what you need. It's, you know, you might say something like, it's hard to understand you when you're talking like that, but I'm here to help. I want to know what's going on for you. So that's one thing I'm seeing a lot of: whining, regression. A lot of people are reporting sibling fighting, probably because they're, you know, being thrown together without their playmates and their parents are otherwise occupied. And I think that really trying to remember that, as I said before, they're not giving us a hard time, they're having a hard time. And I think also just a good prescription for whenever we're feeling a lot of stress is to try and get some laughter happening. Not at the moment of the whining necessarily, because that can feel kind of insulting for kids sometimes, but, you know, start your day with 10 minutes of laughter and roughhousing with your children. Take a break in the afternoon, everybody get laughing for 10 minutes, because I think that's helpful for them to start to try and release some of the stress that's stored up in their bodies, and it's helpful for us to release some of the stress that's stored up in our bodies. You can't feel afraid and be laughing at the same time. So really just get laughing. And I know that's hard because it does feel like a serious time right now, and we're worried about things and we're stressed. But really, if we can just try and put that aside for 10 minutes a couple times a day and get that laughter going, it's going to help us be able to cope better with everything that is challenging us.
I love that. It's, yeah, laughing, playfulness, having fun. Those are just such a great ways to shift. And I don't know if the audience have heard of laughter yoga, but it's actually a thing and kids love that. So maybe even Googling laughter yoga, there could be some things you could find on YouTube or something like that. But it's an actual yoga method that is based on just laughing. And there really doesn't have anything to do with traditional yoga asanas. It's just laughing and inducing laughter, because even if we laugh, even if we don't like feel that something is funny, but we just start laughing, we are already like kind of triggering the brain to like release those feel-good hormones and endorphins and whatnot. So I love that. I love that idea. And really, Sarah, so important what you said is doing kind of both, and like kids who are whining, yeah, addressing their underlying feelings, and you can still ask for like a redirection or correction about the the voice. So, but important is to start with validating the underlying feeling there as well.
Yeah, and also I think sometimes it's, whining's cousin is the demanding, the demanding child, get me I said I wanted the blah, blah, blah. And again, we can address that by saying, of course I'm going to get you some milk. You can just say, Mama, can I please have some milk next time? So we can redirect the tones of voice while still meeting the need that the child's expressing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And all that takes a lot of awareness and staying calm and taking, doing the self-care and taking care of parents taking care of themselves. Great. Thank you, Sarah. Does anybody else want to add to this conversation? Any other ideas or tools, techniques? Yeah, Debbie.
Yeah, I just love what Sarah said, and the thing that I've been focusing on personally and have been talking a lot about with my parents is just that empathy piece, like empathy, and just, and what empathy really looks like, right? It is acknowledging it, even if it's the same thing that we've heard like every day for the past 57 days or whatever, not shutting it down and just, yeah, I see that. I can see you're feeling this. And just, we so need to help our kids process their confusing emotions right now. It's, we have to help them kind of make sense of what's going on and make sure that we remain a safe and open place for them to come, with their big, scary emotions. And so even if it sounds like a broken record sometimes, it doesn't mean we have to let them go on for 20 minutes complaining about something, but saying, I hear you, what I'm hearing is this, setting a boundary for ourselves when we need to, when we're starting to get triggered, as well is important. But showing up with empathy, I think, is one of the most powerful things we can do right now.
Absolutely. Lots of it. Towards the kids and towards the parents themselves, right? Thank you for, and with children, it really is like, for us adults, like it can be so kind of like, this repetition, like you talk about, Debbie, like it can be like, well, I've already said that, I've done that, but this is the world of the adults. The world of children, they need that repetition because their brain is still forming, whatever fires together, wires together in the brain. So you just want to keep being that, being that broken record, really, and repeating those no matter how many times you've said that. And children actually thrive in that and they love that. For them, it's not boring. Like for them, it's almost like, it's a kind of like a new thing again. Great. Yeah, anybody else who wants to? Yeah, Julie.
I have, this is such wonderful advice, and acknowledging and sort of joining the children in their struggle. I think the way that we can be the most effective in that is, we notice that if we're stressed out, right? If we're not showing compassion and empathy toward ourselves, it's really hard to show that to our kids, right? So I think that in the perfect scenario, we can have the patience to process with them, but when we've got other kids demanding us and we're struggling with our spouse and there's dinner to be made and there's a lot, and that a lot of times I think those are the moments when we are not our best selves with our kids, and we lose our patience and we maybe yell and stop whining, and we're human, right? And I think it's important for parents, as we get this advice and we take it all in, and we are doing our very best to implement all these great strategies, we're gonna be better able to act this way and be the parent that we want to be if we are practicing self-care and we're doing what we need to take breaks in our day, and to, when we're feeling stressed and aggravated and frustrated with work or whatever, that we get outside and walk around the block for 5 minutes, and so that we can come back and be the parent that we want to be. And also to give ourselves grace right now, that just like our kids are going to lose it sometimes, so are we, right? And that even if we do, you know, not show up to our kid, and we do get short with a kid, or don't react the way that we would want to be able to say, okay, and we can circle back and say, hey, I'm sorry I yelled at you. That was about me. I'm feeling frustrated and scared, and, you know, or whatever the emotions are, to sort of model to our kids that we are humans too, and we're going to make mistakes, and that we are, and that we can go back and turn things around. And but just to really be compassionate with ourselves during this time, because it's really hard, and there's a lot of demands, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of unknowns. We're trying to show up the best, you know, to our kids, to our job, with our jobs, with our partners perhaps, and there's stresses of, you know, finances and things like that that we're all you know, battling. So I think that it's important that we're taking good care of ourselves during this time, and that we are being compassionate and empathetic toward ourselves as parents.
Right, and so important, and that there are ways to do that, and ways to take care of self, even when things are shut down, even when they're, you know, you might not have your usual places to go, but still getting creative in terms of how to, you know, how to take care of yourself, even when there is, you know, not your usual outlets available. Like you said, going for a walk. Maybe I think one of the things you also talk about is like that social contact, you know, having somebody to talk to, reaching out to people for support, having a debriefing buddy maybe, or something like that. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Julie? Like more specific, you know, you have the, you're really the self-care expert. Anything else that comes to mind? Any other nuggets of information or tools for parents to really take care of themselves right now? Being that people are confined in their homes.
Yeah, I think you know, they in crisis, as you know, a lot of us know, the things that are sort of beneath the surface a lot of times, you know, come out and up for all of us, right? For our kids and for us. So again, I think one of the biggest things right now is self-compassion in all ways. And I think we also, it's important for us from a self-care perspective to be creative. Like maybe the things that we used to do that we could kind of exhale, and, you know, maybe going to get a manicure or meeting a friend for dinner, right? And do the things that we could do to sort of release and sort of recharge. We may not have access to that right now. So being creative, and okay, so what is it about going out to dinner with a friend what do I really need in that? And that is actually time aside, you know, no kids, no part, you know, just me and a friend. Okay, so how about grabbing a glass of wine and you know, shutting the door somewhere and hopping on a Zoom call with a friend? And right. You know, sorry kids, mom's not available for an hour. You know, things like that we still need those things, right? Maybe you know, just taking a bath, you know, trying to have time alone, reading books, you know, connecting with group. I mean, I've done lots of our book club, you know, we're doing Zoom book clubs, things that that we all need. We need the human interaction that we're not able to have right now. So being creative and thinking about it differently, and getting to the core of what we really need to feel good and to thrive, and to figure out how we can make that happen without being able to physically meet.
Right. And that prioritizing the self-care, that because sometimes you know, there's guilt in that, and certainly I've had these experiences too, where like I somehow need some excuse or reason to have time for myself, when the reason is you, like you really are the reason. So having this, you know, feeling worthy, I'm worthy of this time. I'm worthy and I'm deserving of this time by myself, away from from kids and everything else. And that is important. There's no like other excuse or reason that is needed for that. So kind of wanted to put that out there as well. Thank you, Julie. Yeah, go ahead. Did you want to add something?
I want to say one thing that I think is important to acknowledge right now. I think that the moms, the single moms and the moms with young kids, literally, I don't think a day goes by that my heart just doesn't, I mean, especially for moms who are used to being, you know, relying on grandma or neighbor or, you know, to help. And so I think that this is, I mean, it's challenging for all moms to find time to take care of ourselves. I think that the moms who really have no other help, I think that is really challenging. And what I would say to those moms right now is that, you know what, leave when the kids go to sleep, right? Don't do the laundry. Okay. Just, you know, you can't do that every night, whatever, but really to grab those moments when you can, like you're saying, I am worthy of having an hour where I'm not going to clean up the kitchen right now. I'm not going to go to the laundry. I'm just going to take a moment to sit, to call a friend, to read a book, and to grab that time, because it's few and far between right now. And we need it. You need it. So
yes, absolutely, so important. And yeah, parents need it. And as well, you know, when our cup is filled, when your cup is filled and there are, you know, resources and you're feeling better, then you can also show up for kids, being patient, present, and loving, and children in return respond to that. So it's this positive feedback loop that starts happening with less dysregulation, less behavior issues, because parents are showing up in a different way for their kids now because they've taken care of themselves. So thank you, Julie, for those great ideas. Is there anybody else who wants to add to this conversation? Debbie, yes, please.
Yeah, I will. I love what Julie said about the self-compassion. And I've been hearing from a lot of parents who are just what you said. They may be single parents, or they're burned out. They're just completely burned out. And so even the suggestion that, you know, they're like, I'm failing at self-care too. Like they're lumping that on top of everything else that they're experiencing. And I just wanted to share my definition of self-care. It's two pieces. One is that it's something that's intentional. And the second is that it's something that's just for you. And so even within that framework, self-care can be something that you're doing while your kid's in the room. It could be something they're involved with. You know, it could be like putting on a song that you know makes you happy and like having a little spaz attack like I did in the kitchen the other day. And then maybe your kid joins you or whatever. You know, it's little snippets. It can be a minute here, a minute there. My self-care right now is listening to a podcast while I cook dinner. Like that just makes me happy. And it's like, I just tune people out and I just listen and I cook. I'm doing something that has to be done, but I'm intentionally feeding my soul a little bit. And it's something I'm doing just for me. So we can get really creative. We don't need, you know, I have a stack of books. I still have yet to sit down and just take time to read, but just like a hot shower for 3 minutes with the door closed and no interruptions can be self-care if you're doing it specifically to fill your soul.
Yeah, such an important point, to be present and mindful when you're doing the self-care. You know, Dr. Rick Hansen really talks about this, is that, you know, the negative experiences, the stress and anxiety is like Velcro. It just like sticks to your brain, sticks to your memory. And then positive experiences and memories, they're like Teflon, it kind of slides through. So when we are doing self-care, to be really mindful of that and really having presence with that, and even saying things like, you know, kind of noticing that I am taking care of myself. And that's kind of sinks deeper into the mind-body system then. And it becomes over time more and more natural and more kind of easier just to kind of do it. And that can become the default mode. Great. Thank you, Debbie. Okay, great. Yeah, Kelli.
Oh, sorry, I do have some background noise. I'm trying to mute it, but I can't seem to, it's my computer fan. But I was just going to add the whole piece of social media and recognizing that you are the expert. You're the mom, you're the expert of your family, and there's so much comparison going on. I can't believe the Pinterest moms that came out of the woodwork right now that are homeschooling experts and you know, that are just no one's fighting, everyone's walking and playing cards and movie nights, and you know, just to give yourself grace, not to compare, and don't step into that comparison. Recognize when you're doing it, and I've noticed a lot of people think that that is their self-care, kind of zoning out on social media without recognizing, without recognizing that where their emotions are going, even how they're spiraling, how they're feeling when they're on social media, and then they're, you know, they're being interrupted, and that's not necessarily filling your cup. So I just think that's an important, especially right now, because I think people are thinking that's where their connection is coming from. And it may be doing more harm than good. Just to be mindful of your time limits and those things. So
Yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, we know the social media can just suddenly kind of suck us in there. And then suddenly it's like 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, we just spend time for like doing what? Really nothing. And what the mind does too is like, it's so automatic, like those comparisons that starts up happening, like, oh, look at so-and-so has this beautiful house or this or that. And our mind is now suddenly automatically doing this and making these comparisons, creating stress and anxiety. So thank you for the
and
point,
really, we
Kelli.
don't see all the crap they threw in the corner when they took that pretty picture.
No, exactly. No, nobody's having breakdowns and crying and makeup all over the face in the Facebook. Like, yeah, that's the reality, but it's not really there. But yeah. But Kelli, I want to actually stay with you because, like I said in the beginning, you've gone through this really years and years of limbo when you were in your adoption process, and you went through like years and years of the unknown, just like we are right now in this place of like unknown. We don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know. So I would love to hear from you, like, what are the ways to cope with that, being in limbo, in this unknown? Like, what are your, like, you know, your best nuggets of information?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really looking at it as a pivotal moment. We kind of leveled the playing field for our activities, all of the things that we had built in our life. We get to choose what gets added back in. We get to look at it and see what actually was building our family up. A lot of families get really busy. And especially with kids from hard places, you know, they've built all this activity in and not paid attention to what to kind of mask instead of having to deal with some of the healing that needs to be done even. And so I think I see that is happening a lot with the regression. You know, there's like this, oh my gosh, now we came this far. I think Sarah said that, like, you know, it's normal to regress under these stressful situations, even for us. And so definitely not allowing your mind to think you've taken 10 steps backwards, but recognizing that there can be purpose in the waiting, there can be purpose in the rebuilding, in the reset, in the opportunity to connect with your kids in ways that maybe you haven't even noticed, like in things maybe that are happening with them. Yeah, I definitely think it's just a matter of reframe. It's easy to look at what we're missing, but at the same time, we have been given a lot more resources. I feel like we've been given opportunities and a lot more resources that we didn't have so readily available. And so even online counseling, you know, online therapy has become a thing. you know, and
I'm doing play therapy online now. I could never imagine that I could do play therapy with the 4-year-old child online, and I'm doing it and it works beautifully.
well, and so
So surprised.
for those people maybe who their child's therapist wasn't the best fit, now's a great opportunity to look at what you can do different. And I'm from a small town, so options aren't that, you know, like the resources. And now that the resources have all come online, it's just, I mean, for people in smaller communities who aren't in bigger cities, who don't have everything available, you know, there's just a lot more support if you're willing to access it.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. Thank you, Kelly. Does anybody else want to jump in and contribute to that conversation? Kind of like, okay, how do we handle this limbo? How do we manage, you know, being in this long stretch of unknown? Anybody else wants to contribute to that?
I just want to share a funny thing that a client, two of the wisest things I've heard anyone say during this pandemic were from 3-year-olds. One of them was my niece, who's turning 3 tomorrow, and she said, "I miss people," she said to my sister, which I can totally relate to. And then a client's 3-year-old wakes up in the morning and says to her, "Today is yesterday." And I was like, that is so perfect. And today is yesterday. And that's what it feels like. But I just wanted to add on to the limbo thing, is just to remind ourselves that it is a moment in time, and it might feel like today is yesterday, and that today is like 30 days ago also, but that it is just a moment in time. At least that's what I'm telling myself.
Yeah, I love that. It's a moment in time, and this too shall pass. Yeah, absolutely. But
I
that,
think,
yeah, go ahead.
Paula, I think too, along those lines, I think it's really important to be able to accept the present and like find acceptance, right? Like I've realized even within myself, you know, how future focused, right, I have been, and how so much of the way I think is about, okay, planning and what's going to happen, and that, and when you're forced with such limbo ahead of us and you have to just focus on what's happening today, there's a lot that has to happen in terms of letting go of a lot of the knowns, and there's so much that we can't control right now, and just staying focused on what we can control. And that's really about right now. I mean, that's all we really, you know, to stay present and focused with the here and now, which I think is really hard for people. I think that's where a lot of the anxiety comes in, is like, but what's going to happen? What's going to happen tomorrow? And then, you know, and I think, and of course there are real concerns, but to kind of balance those with like, all right, I'm just going to embrace right here, right now, because that's what we've got.
That's it.
I love that.
That's what we got. Go ahead, Kelly.
Julie, I think that is a really great point. And since Paula mentioned that limbo that I was in, that is so nature, to try to skip ahead, to not be present when the present is painful. But it's a great time to develop that resiliency, and it's a great time to learn how to like yourself, almost, you know, how to learn how to be present. So some grounding exercises, some mindfulness exercises, and then we're modeling that for our kids when we do it for ourselves. So I think, yeah, that probably is the number one thing that I would say even is being present, because you develop a habit of not being present. You can really get in that, and we don't want to skip. I mean, there's always a gift in the middle if we're willing to notice it. So
absolutely. We get to be seekers of that gift that is in the pain, and like you said, Kelly, like, yeah, the present moment is uncomfortable, it's scary, like so much pressure, all these things. But yeah, if we just stay in the present moment, like, what is the gift of that? Like I said in the beginning, how do we penetrate through all that pain and all that stuff and find that gift? And one of my favorite questions is like asking to ground yourself in the present moment is literally asking yourself, like, is everything okay right now? Like in the fundamental level, is everything okay? Do I have a roof over my head? Do I have food in the refrigerator? Are all the kids healthy? Am I okay? And, just grounding yourself that most of the time the answer to those things is a yes. So in the fundamental level, things are okay right now. I'm okay. So I want to go back to, we'll take maybe a couple more questions. Let's see, a couple more topics to discuss, and then we are going to move on to the Q&A and taking questions from the attendees. But something that Sarah said, this wisdom of a 3-year-old is that I miss people. I'd like to throw this ball at Debbie about how can we help children cope with missing their teachers, missing their friends, all their usual hobbies and their activities and all these things. So, and I'm hearing that a lot, like, and I'm seeing it in kids play, like, so a lot of play, like this 4-year-old girl that I had, for many sessions now, she's playing that, kids are going back to school, they miss school and they get to go back to school. So she's processing her, missing her preschool. So Debbie, what do you have in terms of advice for parents helping kids cope with those losses?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of the logistics of helping kids find different ways to connect with other kids online. So I'm sure that many parents are already doing this, but I know that in my house, there's been a lot more online connection on Discord and other things, playing games together and actually just connecting with friends actually that my son hasn't connected with in a while. They've kind of come back together. So this can be a time to revisit relationships, or, writing letters is something like writing letters, it could be kind of a fun activity to do now to bring that back in and get creative that way. And I think, in different communities, people are also doing the rainbows in the windows or different things in the windows. And so finding ways to I live in Brooklyn, so I see a lot of drive-by birthday celebrations, or there's a lot of creative ways to visit somebody. Someone stays up on the stoop and other people stay on the sidewalk. So those are just some strategies for actually making the connections happen. And I think it's also okay to just, again, process this with your kid. Yeah, this is really hard. What are you feeling right now? What is it, help them kind of process what they're experiencing and feel. Maybe they have FOMO. They're afraid they're missing out on something. They're afraid that their friends might forget about them. This could be triggering all kinds of insecurities and fears for them. So just talking with them about that, talking that through, putting it in perspective, and doing kind of the coaching work with them that we would do on ourselves, right? Getting clear on what they're most concerned about. But I love what you said too about this being a moment in time, or I don't know if Paul, if it was you or I don't remember who said it, but it was just such a great reminder that this is just a moment, right? This is a moment in time. This is not forever. This is temporary, and helping our kids have that perspective too. And maybe even planning what do you want to do? Let's make a list of some things that you look forward to doing with your friends when this is over. And helping them see that they're not really losing anything. I think that's the fear of kids, is that they're going to lose friends or that the world's going on without them. And just listening to that and reminding them that we'll be able to kind of pivot and reconnect, and how great that's going to feel when we're able to do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So really be that grounding force for the kids. And that, I think it's also a great way to maybe there's a teaching opportunity of gratitude in this, for children and families as well. Kind of like, okay, having gratitude about being able to go to school later on and being able to be friends, and how important those connections are. But yeah, that's really great. Thank you, Debbie, for your ideas to get creative with how children can be connected to their friends and their family too, and that they get to process and talk about it. And with younger children, a great way is just to have them draw, you know, maybe have them do a drawing or something like that around that. Is there anybody else that wanted to add to this in terms of any other ideas of how to help children cope with being away from friends, family, school? Any other ideas? Okay, great. So I'm looking at the time, and I think at this point we will move on to question and answer, unless anybody has anything else that they wanted to say before we move on to taking some question and answer. So people can start typing in their Q&A, their questions. Okay, great. So the first thing I want to address here is that there was, I'm trying to find it in the wave. So we were talking a lot about moms and a lot of support for moms, and then we don't want to leave the dads out either. So any ideas for dads, like what are you hearing in terms of how is this experience for dads, and how any ideas for dads specifically to help them, to support them, to help them cope with this situation? So any insights on that, anybody? Debbie, I see, were you gonna say something? Yeah, I saw your hand go for the button. It's like, hey, me.
I will say that my husband is cooking his famous, baking his famous cookies right now. So that's how we're dividing the labor right now. But no, you know, I just want to say this for, obviously many families are together in the same space in a way that we haven't been in the past. And it's what I'm hearing a lot in my community, which is primarily comprised of moms, although there are some dads in there. The moms often have kind of the institutional knowledge, right, about a child. They often are the ones who kind of know, you know, or just, they're more aware of certain strategies or language and that kind of thing, because they often, again, this isn't across the board, but often moms are playing more that day-to-day role, and a lot of dads are now at home in the mix. And I've heard from a lot of parents how challenging this has been. And so the one thing I would just say for both parents is to just really, we talked about self-compassion, but thinking about how can we be compassionate about how the other parent, if we are living with a parenting partner, how they're experiencing this as well. If we have a partner who isn't as up to speed on certain issues, whether it's discipline or other things, or just haven't been around, especially again with differently wired kids, there's some behavior that we may respond to differently. So being really patient in that process, understand our partner's perspective and the, you know, what they have to contribute, and don't hold on to that knowledge, right? I hear that from a lot of moms of kind of owning that information, and that can create conflict. And so I think this is a really good opportunity too for parents to learn more about how they're going to work together to support their children. I mean, it's great. We get lots of practice. There's no shortage of time right now to practice these skills. And, you know, I think showing up together, committed to designing an alliance that can best support your family is really where we want to start. And with that intention, this is a really interesting opportunity for most of us to grow our relationships.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I love that, you know, idea that this is actually an opportunity to grow. And one important thing, kind of adding on to what you were already saying, like, yeah, there could be a situation where the parents are in a different page, but there doesn't have to be this argument or fight about it, but really extending that grace and that understanding, like, and really generous listening, like, yeah, you know, this is important to you. Because it's important to you, I'm going to listen even though I don't agree. But usually that starts to kind of dissolving some of these more fiery topics. So yeah, so for really partners and parents have time for themselves as well, time for the relationship too. Great. How about anybody else want to share what kind of what's happening in their lives, or what do you hear the struggles in your communities are right now? Yeah, Sarah.
I was gonna say, I think it was Kelly, I can't remember, who said we get to choose what we want to put back from our old lives after the pandemic. I'm definitely putting back that I'm the only one who works from home. So that's what I'm gonna keep.
That's a keeper. Yeah.
So just to say, I think the struggle with everybody trying to work from home and the kids, and you know, one parent, and that was me, being more like kind of abreast of what everyone's doing and how and where, and then it's challenging. It's challenging for everyone, I think. That's just a little. I'm with you, whoever's feeling that way with the challenges of everyone being at home.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Kelly? Yeah.
I think there are a lot of parents maybe who are kind of having to face some of the things they've been kind of pushing aside. I mean, that's really what being together so much has brought, you know, like if you have not been talking about XYZ, you kind of have to now, you know, you kind of have to. And so being careful not to project, being careful to recognize how your own fears are coming into those conversations, you know, just being honest about what you're feeling. I think that was the biggest thing we talked about with our kids, even connecting with them about how we're feeling gives them permission to feel. It's the same way with our spouse. So I think that's just, I think recognizing we can all be amygdala hijacked, right? Like sometimes we just need to breathe. And so for sure, I catch myself holding my breath a lot. I don't know if, you know, you realize that's when you're stressed. Oh, I'm so taking those deep breaths for sure.
Yeah. Starting with the breath, one breath at a time, for sure. Great. Thank you so much. Let me take one more question, and I'm seeing it coming here in the thread. And don't worry if we don't get to your question. Please write it in the chat anyways. What I'm going to do with the chat is I'm going to read everything that you wrote. Like, I don't care how late at night I'm going to be up. I'm going to read everything that you wrote, and I'm going to respond to your question. So even if we don't get to your question right now, I will be responsible for answering all your questions, and I want to make sure that everybody gets their questions answered. So one of the biggest things that was coming up though is homeschooling, and we didn't really touch upon that. So, you know, the biggest issue right now is the homeschooling, attempting to use technology and having many kids at different grades, different level, different ages. Like, you know, what are some ideas for parents about kind of general guidelines on how to handle homeschooling right now? Who wants to take that on? Silence. Go ahead, Debbie.
I can share some thoughts. I did homeschool for 6 years, so.
Oh, you're an expert in that then.
Yeah, I homeschooled one child, and I was, you know, even though I was a reluctant homeschooler, I still wasn't thrown into it by fire like everyone else has been. But I'll say that the things that helped the most were kind of looking at this as of collaboration, no matter what age your child is, thinking about how can I partner with my child to help this school run more smoothly. Because if we try to be the teacher or the principal and do this very top-down approach, that's really setting up the, you know, the possibility for a lot of conflict. And we don't, that's not what we want, especially now when we're kind of in this environment with our kids. We want to reduce the amount of conflict and the nagging and the monitoring and that kind of thing, and maintain the integrity of our relationship with our kids. So if you approach this with your child or your children as, you know, this is our school, even if they're doing online school, this is our school environment. How can we design our environment so that it can, you know, help you reach your school goals and can help me have the time that I need to do my job, and, you know, kind of help this house stay as calm as possible. And so that's really important to get buy-in from our kids. And then having meetings, like having a morning meeting every day before school starts. What's happening today? How are you feeling about today? Where should we do our schoolwork? Like really designing like the spaces and the flow if you do have flexibility in when things happen. So I think as much as you can bring them in and set up expectations maybe for the whole week. If you have older kids, it can be nice to say, what do you have on your plate for the week? You know, and then you can check in every morning. Like, I know that you have a paper that you're working on. How's that? What do you want to work on this week? Sorry, a little kid just ran out in the middle of the street outside my window. The mom got the kid. It's all good.
Good.
But, you know, so finding ways to support them. And like I said in the very beginning, our job is not to make our kids fill in every check sheet right now and every reading log. And, if you are noticing a lot of resistance around all of this, it's time to take a step back and see, okay, what can I take off my child's plate right now? What can I do right now to make this situation feel better for our family? And how can I ask for that and advocate for that? So it's kind of a rambly answer, but those are some ideas.
Oh, thank you. It makes perfect sense. So collaboration, collaborating with your kid, letting go a lot of expectations, maybe advocating with the teacher. And also, like, I love that idea, like, let the child decide where and how they do their work. And so I'm from Finland, and we have a very unique educational system where we don't have standardized testing. We are actually getting rid of any grading of the child's work. So there's no grades anymore. The Finnish classroom is, there's bean bags and there's plants and there's a couch, there's a there's like all kinds of things like that. So when you walk into a Finnish classroom, you see kids hanging upside down from a bean bag, maybe like this, doing their work. Somebody sitting on the windowsill. It doesn't matter. Like, the kids are like there and they are doing their work and they are doing it their way. So not having an idea that it's supposed to look like you're sitting on your desk and filling out a worksheet, that kind of goes against childhood development and what we know about learning. So let the kid do their work wherever they want, and then involve them. And like Debbie said, also, like, yeah, what do they want to work on at any given time? Because it's hard. Like, if you say, like, now it's time to do math, and the kid doesn't want to do math, and then we have a power struggle there. So being flexible with that and letting the child decide, like, what do you want to work on now? Great. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a really good book too for parents of kids maybe in middle school and up. It's called The Self-Driven Child. It's one of my favorite resources. And this is a really nice time, put it on your Audible if you have that. So you can just listen to it while you're cooking dinner, going for a walk. But it really helps give you some language around, again, like making sure that you don't become the nag parent and hurting your relationship, but really helping your child develop some more just autonomy over their process, and then us letting go of some of our attachment to what it's going to look like or what the outcome of their school experience is going to be.
Right. Great. Thank you. What a great resource that is. So thank you so much. We're going to wrap up here, and I know Julie needs to jump off, and I know, maybe some of you need to jump off as well. Did anybody want to say any closing remarks or anything else before we are done? Great. Julie.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you
for
doing
thank
this,
you.
And thanks to everybody who joined in, and just sending lots of love and lots of strength to everybody.
Me too. It was really nice to meet you, ladies.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Kelly, Debbie, Julie. You guys are absolutely amazing. You are like these beacons of light in this world, generously contributing your time and expertise and personal experiences even. And that's what this time is about right now, is being there for each other, supporting, being generous, checking up on each other. So that's why I'm doing this, and just kind of want to provide a lot of value and support for parents. So Great. Thank you so much, everybody. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
Thank you.
be
Paula.
safe, be
Thank you.
well,
Bye.
take care of each other. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.